everyone, welcome back. I am here. I have taken a little bit of a break. I think we did a month off of podcasts or podcast episodes, and I just wanted to say thank you for being patient. Sometimes I just need to take a little bit of a break as I kind of decide what do I want the next set of episodes to feel like and look like and sound like, and often that comes with just giving myself a little bit of space instead of just rushing and pushing through it. I just kind of really think it's important to be thoughtful about what I create, how is it serving? I'm not one that really looks at analytics. And I did this time because I wanted to see, what do you guys want to listen to? What are you guys enjoying? What are the episodes that are helpful? And so in doing so, it helps me sort of really decide and understand how I want to show up in this space and how I want to serve. I mean, ultimately, for me, the podcast exists because I realize not everybody might be able to do coaching or hire me to be their coach, or not everybody needs a coach, but you might just need support in the gray area in those moments when things feel overwhelming. And so my hope has always been with this podcast and with my writing is to just create a space where you feel seen, heard, and supported, and ultimately safe. So with that, I sort of looked through, and I'm going to revisit some of the more popular episodes that you guys really liked. Again, total shock to me, but you guys do listen to the solo episodes, so thank you. And one of the ones that gets a ton of shares and a ton of downloads is when I talk about why kids don't listen. So today we're going to talk a little more specifically about that. I'm going to reframe this for you because I think when I meet a family or when I have somebody reach out to me and say, my kid does not listen. They absolutely don't listen. It does not matter what I do. And unless I yell, unless I threaten to take something away, that's the only way I can get them to cooperate. So I already know, even in that statement, that you don't have a bad kid. And you're not a bad parent. And I think sometimes we see it as like, I just have a really challenging kid, or my kid is a handful, or I might not be doing this right. So we kind of look to see where the source of blame is. And the truth is, for me, all that you're describing to me is what I will call a defective pattern. So what's really happened is somewhere along the way, again, in probably a very innocuous way, not in a very purposeful or intentional way. It's partly because we're parents and we're tired and we're doing a million things at once. But somewhere along the way, you developed a pattern between you and your child and the expectations that you might have around listening. And that pattern started to favor the idea that they don't have to listen the first time. And then they actually start to realize that, wait, they are telling me to put the iPad away, but actually this happens every time. And it isn't until they say it 6 more times and their voice changes that I actually have to put the iPad away, because that's when they'll do something. That's when they'll take it out of my hands. That's when they will get really, really mad and start to take something I love away. So kids, by design, learn in patterns. And they are constantly learning based on things they're getting out of their environment. As parents, we create patterns without even realizing we're creating patterns. And because our kids really operate as little scientists, if you can see it this way, you start to realize that they are literally taking data, and that data informs their decision. I mean, this isn't actually happening in a mathematical way, but it really is what that process looks like for them. Kids are simple. I've said this so many times. I think most adults, I'll even say professionals, myself, people in the space of, some form of expertise kind of come in. And I actually think sometimes we complicate it. Kids are simple. Adults are not simple. So when we see things through our complicated adult lens, we usually complicate what the child is doing. And it's really not that complicated if we just can look at it with neutrality, get our own feelings out of the way, get any labels out of the way, and just really look at the problem as it is and what it's showing us. So now let's circle back to that idea that I have a kid that doesn't listen. Okay, fair. It's probably true. It's exhausting. It's frustrating, because what ends up happening is you are in a pattern of state the direction, repeat the direction again, get more mad, start to raise your voice, start to get even more upset, and then we usually blow up. And that's when our child goes, oh, now they mean it, and then they get up and they respond. So there's a way we can just bypass that whole middle part. And the reason we want to think about it this way is, if I know it's a pattern problem, and again, if I can see it as it's a defective pattern, meaning it's a pattern that's leading to an outcome I don't want, that's really not best for my child either, and it's a skill, my job is really to teach them the skill of listening and following through on directions. Well, that starts to empower me because that feels a lot easier and tangible and fixable than I'm just not a great parent and I just don't have a very good kid who's good at listening. Because when that's the story, I'm not a good parent, or I don't have control of my kid, or I have a bad kid that doesn't listen, all we'll keep doing is we'll keep noticing evidence that supports that story, right? It's like confirmation bias at its finest. But if we remove our feelings around it and we don't attach any attribute to our child about it, and we look at it as what skill is lacking, and how can I bring neutrality into this situation, and what is likely the pattern we've created, that becomes 10 times easier to correct and fix. So knowing that, let's think about the pattern of a parent who is in the process of, and I'm going to unpack this in a few different ways, but let's look at the parent who repeats themselves all the time. Okay, going back to what I just said, for most kids, they're just taking data. So that kid realizes that when their voice is at that volume and in that tone, they don't do anything. Because remember, kids always want to know, what are you going to do? Not what are you saying. So we have to have actions attached to our words. Otherwise, it just leaves us a little bit in a position of not being able to really follow through in any constructive way. Now, by doing something, I don't mean punishing. I don't mean timeouts or something like that, even though if that's what you're doing, I suppose that's fair too. But what I'm saying is like, for example, the iPad, you could say something like, hey, in 2 minutes, I'm going to tell you it's time to put the iPad away. You're probably not going to want to listen because I know you love the iPad so much and I get that. But if you don't put it away, I will come and take it. That's your action. I will come and take the iPad. Now, once you do this X amount of times, for every child, it's very different. It depends on their developmental stage. And you follow through on the exact thing that you say, you don't have to keep saying, I'm going to do this. Because then what starts to happen is now they've developed the skill of listening. And so at that point, you're going to say, hey, in 2 minutes, we've got to put that iPad away. And they're going to go, okay. And they're going to listen because they know if they don't, you will do something. So that's a new pattern, right? We're bringing in a new pattern. Right now, the way the pattern stands is you don't do anything until you get very mad. Okay, now here's what a lot of parents will say to me in coaching. But why does it have to get to that? Why do I have to yell? I see other kids. I see my friends' kids. They say, hey, put the iPad away. And the kid goes, okay. And they run over and stick it on the charger and they go on. Okay, I get that. And I get feeling that way. But thinking and comparing what other kids are doing relative to yours is such a losing battle. My answer is always one, okay, so the other kid just does that. That's fine. That's their kid. It's not your kid. That's like me saying, gosh, I see people and they can eat whatever they want and they don't gain weight and they're like always small and they're always toned. It's just amazing. Why can't it be that way for me? Well, it's not. My body's completely different. My genetics predispose me to a different weight gaining process. I need to do other things to connect with my body. So I could spend a lot of time looking at the people who just lose weight really easily or stay relatively small because they have, really great metabolisms. I don't know. Or I could just say, that's great for them. It doesn't really change anything for me. My situation is still my situation. I have to still figure out how to connect and work with my body and my genetics and my needs. So when we sit and say, well, all these other kids are doing it and mine isn't, okay, that's probably true. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm also trying to say, though, that it's just a really unproductive line of thinking. Now, I get it. But if your aim is like, let's fix the pattern or let's change it, it's just not very productive to stay stuck in that space. So now we're going to look at your pattern. And if I were coaching you, this is exactly what I would say. What are you doing when they're not listening? So if you're on here and you're listening to me and I coach you, you know that's my question usually. And then you'll say, well, I repeat myself. And then I'll say to them, hey, remember we talked about this, right? So now we go in with lots of talking because parents love talking. And our kids kind of don't care because they know that you're the pattern. They know the pattern. They're like, when they yell, that's when I have to put it away. So since we created the pattern inadvertently, right? We didn't mean to. We can also change the pattern. So this is how we disrupt a pattern. We first acknowledge where it is and how we're doing it. Then we say, well, what do I want the aim to be? Well, I don't want to have to repeat myself 100 times. I really want them to just listen when I say it. Okay, what pattern can I create that results in that? Okay, what action am I doing? So instead of letting myself get totally dysregulated and threatening to take the entire world away from my kid, which isn't feasible and usually hard to follow through on, why don't I just think about what will I actually do if they don't listen? And why don't I talk to them about that ahead of time? That way I have a roadmap. I call this framing or priming. And then I tell them this, and then when they don't listen, I'm steady and I'm regulated because I know what to do, and I'm not getting exhausted by repeating myself over and over, and I'm actually just going in and doing the thing I need to do. So let's use a few other examples. Okay, that was the iPad one. So let's say, and again, this is usually not where I like to start with families, but let's say your kids aren't cleaning up their toys. Again, I'm really going to kind of disclaimer this is like if you were coming to me and you're in complete peril about all these things that aren't working in your household or all the power struggles you're having, cleaning up after themselves is like the last place to start because it's just not a very impactful behavior and it doesn't really matter. And over time, you'll get there. So let's just use it for the purposes of just making this a little more concrete. So let's say you say, hey, clean up your toys, clean up your toys, clean up your toys. They don't do it. They ignore you. They either keep playing or they leave the room. And it feels like, oh my gosh, they don't even care what I'm saying. I'm like literally talking to them and nobody's even paying attention. Okay, so now we just go back. We ask ourselves, what's the pattern? We go through and we review. I'm doing a lot of repeating and no action. And then because nobody's listening, I'm feeling mad and then I yell. And then sometimes I give a threat that I can't really follow through on, or sometimes it feels really bad that I yelled, so then I'm trying to co-regulate and repair and say I'm sorry. Okay, so now we rewind and we say, what do we really need? We want them to understand that when it's time to clean up, they need to clean up. So then you might say to them, hey, in 2 minutes we have to clean up our toys. I know you're not going to want to, but when I say it's time to clean up, you need to do it, okay? And if you can't, I'm just going to come over and I'm going to help you pick up those 3 toys that are on the floor. Give yourself something doable. So by helping them, you might physically guide them and be like, oh, great job, look at that. And you might be kind of like wrangling their little hand trying to pick up that toy. And they're going to say, no, 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 and they're not going to want it. And that's okay. Here's another action you could do. Hey, in 2 minutes, we're going to clean up your toys. If you don't listen and don't put them away, I will walk over and put them away. So now you just put the power back in your hands. Who cares who cleans it up, really? What you're trying to get them to do is shift from highly preferred activity to not as preferred activity. I mean, that's the skill. So whether or not they cleaned up the toy for me isn't like a deal breaker. It doesn't really matter. So what is it that you need? If you need them to stop, then you're going to go over and you take the toy away. But what you can't do is find yourself in this trap of like repeating. So let's look at another defective pattern that usually shows up in the context of listening, and that is negotiating. I have so many parents say to me, my kid is constantly negotiating with me. Okay, this is, again, one of those things, as soon as I hear it, I think a lot of parents think to themselves they have a manipulative kid on their hands and this kid doesn't listen. They're a little lawyer, right? And I get that, but it's not true. Your kid is looking at the pattern, and somewhere along the way, you probably negotiated with them, or they presented a pretty reasonable negotiation or compromise, and you were like, makes sense, sounds good, which by the way, we all do, you guys. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing. I've done it a gazillion times when my kids were little. Your lives are busy. You have in some cases, more than one child. Sometimes you have multiple kids. Sometimes you're managing a million different needs at once. And so maybe if the kid comes over and says, hey, can I just finish this game? It has 5 more minutes. And that feels like really like the easy yes right now, considering everything going on. And you go, okay, sure, perfect. But here's the deal. That's a negotiation. And I'm not saying not to do that. And I'm not saying there's no room or place for that, right? Because sometimes it's fair. But it's when it happens enough where it starts to become the pattern, then your child is always going to want to know, how much power do I have when it comes to this outcome? Okay, so let's say you're saying to them, let's say it's a little bit of an older child, and you're like, hey, you've got to turn the video game off and at 9 o'clock or at 8 o'clock or whatever it is. And that time comes and they don't want to do it. So then you say, hey, I told you, we talked about this. It's getting late. You can't stay on it later. They're saying, I know, but I got to finish my game. And if I don't finish my game, it doesn't save my score. And then if I don't save my score, I got to start all over. Like, the argument is solid, right? The kids are giving us really great arguments back. So we're like, all right, our pragmatic part of our brain is like, I kind of get that. Like, go ahead, save your score, finish up your game. So now we go back and we say, all right, did your game end? And you realize they started a new game because they're a kid and they love the activity that they're doing. And they're like, patterns have shown me in the past that sometimes when we go back and forth on these negotiations, until they yell or get really mad, I kind of have a little more time. So they're going to roll the dice. So if you have a stronger-willed kid, let's say 50% of the time you've never negotiated and 50% of the time you did some negotiation with them, those are great odds. So if you have a more kind of compliant kid, they're not going to argue back with you because they're not going to play their odds. They prefer to sort of keep you happy and make you happy. But for a strong-willed kid, they're like, ooh, I got a 50-50 shot here of being able to complete a second game. So now you see they started that second game and you're irate, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, that's it. And now we blow up because it feels like such disregard for this agreement that we had, right? That you said, I was so generous in giving you this extra time so you could save your score and all this stuff. And you didn't even care. You just went ahead and took advantage of my kindness and you started a whole new game. So we're so entrenched in like taking it so personally now that we are coming from such a reactive place because now we're personally offended and insulted at the fact that they did this. So you can even, I'm laughing as I'm saying this because you can see this is so true. Like I'm saying it from my own personal experience. I've done this exact same thing. So instead, this is what I want you to think about. Okay, the pattern is, I just laid it out for you. They've just learned that if they have a chance or there's any kind of likelihood or room to wiggle, they're going to take it. You give them an inch, they take a mile. So this is what we do. Okay, let's say you say to them, hey, in 5 minutes, you've got to turn off the game. And they say, but can I just finish the game because I want to make sure I don't lose my score? That's fair. Okay, let's take that negotiation. Certainly, but here's the thing. If you start a new game, I just want you to know you're going to lose game time tomorrow. Or I just want you to know I'm going to turn the game off right in the middle. I'm not going to say a word. And the next expectation is you just go up and you get ready for bed, right? Whatever the thing is that you need them to do. But you have to ask yourself, what will I do? What will I do? Not what will I say, not what will I threaten, not how upset am I going to get, not talk to them about my feelings. When you don't listen, it really upsets me. And then I don't want to give you more time because you never listen and blah, blah, blah. Nope, we're not doing any of that. We're loud and proud. We're the ones in charge. You are the parent. So just tell them what they can expect. Our feelings are not it's not their job to take care of our feelings. Our feelings are our feelings. So we're not talking to them about how, hey, when you did that, it actually made me upset, blah, blah, blah. Nope. Who cares? They don't care, and we shouldn't either because that's not what they're trying to do. So our job is to correct a defective pattern and to get in there and create a new pattern. When we can see it that way, nothing becomes personal. We're treating this with neutrality. We're a great parent. We got a great kid. By the way, a really great kid who's so smart, who's like, oh gosh, like I can really make this work, and always thinking outside the box. Bravo. We love these kids. I love these kids. I've worked with them forever. So now we just completely change the pattern. You stay regulated, you set that boundary, you give yourself an action, you follow through with that action. And I promise you, your kids will develop that skill in no time. I do this all the time in coaching. And then when you're not emotionally dysregulated yourself and you can just set that boundary, those first few times they are going to get mad. But guess what? You know, and you're just steady and you're like, hey, I'm going to give you time to calm down, and until you calm down, you don't get to do the next thing, right? But if you want to go outside and play with your friends, you need to sit down for a full minute and calm your body back down so we can make good choices, so we can get out there and be our best self for our friends, whatever it might be. And I teach how to do breaks inside of coaching and things of that sort, and it's nuanced, and I can't give you guys a one-size-fits-all answer on here because every child is different and every situation is different, and there's so much that we have to take into consideration. But ultimately, what you really want to think about is, what is the pattern? Is it a defective pattern? How can I change the pattern? And how could I create a pattern that optimizes the development of the skill that they need? When we can see it that way, we will see a reduction in the behaviors we don't want to see, and you will see an increase in the behaviors that you do want to see, pending that you are staying regulated the whole time. And those are the two biggest asks, and those are the hardest. So believe me, I say this, and I know it sounds easier said than done. It takes time. There's a reason I work with families for 12 weeks at a time. It's because you're not going to change it all in 1 minute or in one session. So with that, go notice the patterns. Go ask yourself, you and your partner, if that's your home life and your situation, talk to each other about what patterns have we created, what can we change, do it without judgment, without criticism, without overcorrecting, because patterns usually emerge in our most stressful moments, and they're easy to change, you guys. So don't beat yourself up about like, oh my gosh, well, when we were moving, all this stuff was going on, and that's why I let them start to sleep in our room, and now I got to change it, and da, da, da. Like whatever the pattern is, don't worry. It always usually emerges when something is going on in our lives. A second child, a third child, going back to work, working later hours than usual. Maybe their school setting changes. Maybe there's a transition that happens in your life. Maybe life's just really busy for a week. I work with accountants who sometimes will tell me like up until tax day, they're really, really busy and overworked. So maybe during that season and your child sees you're a lot busier, you start to see an uptick in new behaviors. And that's when those patterns start to shift, or patterns are created that aren't conducive with what we want. It's okay. We all do this in our personal lives, right? Patterns are there for us to spot, to notice with love, with compassion, with self-compassion, and then just ask ourselves, okay, how can I just shift this pattern? So try it out, you guys. Let me know how it goes. And you can message me or just email me at Albiona at the Parenting Reframe and let me know how it goes. It's just a matter of shifting those patterns. And if you guys know that you are ready to dive in, or you're like, gosh, I totally get what she's saying, I totally can understand it, it makes perfect sense, I can see myself in her examples, but when push comes to shove and that moment arises, I still struggle with what to do and what to say and how to do it, grab one of those spots that I have for coaching, because there's only a few spots left for summer, you guys. Most families stay on my schedule because they need me there in the months that their kids are home from school, and I completely get it. So if you know that you're ready for coaching, if you know you want practice, not more knowledge, I'm not giving you more information in coaching. Coaching is about implementation. Okay, now I know what to do, just help me do it. Then go ahead, book a free discovery call. Let's chat. I promise you the transformation is so well worth it. It's one of the things that I love doing more than anything else, is really getting in there and helping families connect with their kids, connect with yourself, work your way through it. And I promise you there's always ways to really fix anything. It's just truly what I believe. So with that, you guys, good luck. Let me know how it goes. And thank you so much for being here.